Ballin and Esperanza came from the group Blueseum.
Sounds pretty nice, doesn't it? Hey everybody, welcome to another vintage audio listening experience. And I know it's been a while, and boy haven't I heard from you guys about Rosie, where are the vintage audio listening experiences? Where's the rebuilding? What's going on? Well, as you guys know, in summertime, I don't like to spend a lot of time in here because of the heat, and well, it's not a fun place to be working. So I tend to use the workshop wintertime and confine my rebuilding activities to that period of time. It's a lot more comfortable. Yeah, I have to put the heater on sometimes, but it's okay. Anyway, as those of you who have been on the channel know, one of my great loves in vintage audio is the Pioneer line, particularly the early Pioneer lines from the late 1950s, 1959 to about 1970, I would say. To me, it really strikes a chord. Some of them weren't even stereo, as this one is not stereo, the SM-Q300B. But there's something really cool about it, and there's something massive about the build quality. I mean, they are just enormous in size, enormous in bulk, and they are built to last forever. And one of the great joys I had in late winter and spring was repairing and restoring my 300B. And if you haven't seen that, make sure to check out that series in the playlist, Vintage Audio Restorations. I got the unit for basically nothing, and it wasn't working, and I was able to bring it back to life. And boy, I'll tell you, it wasn't a lot of stuff required to do it, and it just took off, and it runs, and it sounds so beautiful that, well, I've waited months and months and months, and finally realized I haven't done a vintage audio listening experience with this Pioneer. Now, this unit was produced, I think, in about 1959. It predates broadcast stereo, which came into existence in 1961. I think Chicago, Illinois had the first stereo broadcast. It was pioneered by Zenith engineer Elmer somebody or other. He was the one that finally conquered broadcast stereo, which was a lot more technically difficult than you may imagine. But if I put it like this, you'll understand the difficulties. You have one signal on one set frequency, and yet you have to derive two different channels. Let me think about that for about 30 or 50 years. Well, he finally solved it, and he's in the Radio Pioneers Hall of Fame for that. Anyway, this predates stereo, but it was set up so when you got what was called a multiplexing, they knew it was coming in the late 1950s and early 60s. They just didn't know when, but they spec'd it out so that you could have easily put in a multiplex board and adapt this to stereo at such time it would happen. Let's come down and take a closer look here, because I want to show you what's unusual about this unit too. It's the only unit I have that has a short wave capability to it. Yes, FM, AM, and short wave. You have to remember at that time, and TV hadn't really caught fire in a really major way yet in the late 1950s. That was still to come in the early 60s. And through the 1970s, radio was still big. And one of the fun hobbies that people enjoyed was shortwave listening. And, well, Pioneer thought, well, why don't we give everybody a threefer here? The shortwave, the FM, and the AM. We'll just power pack it into one unit, and it'll be great. Well, this thing, I don't even have an owner's manual on it, is probably the most complicated system I possess. Reason being is it has two different tuning sections in it. And when I bring you down to the side of the unit here, the front, I'll tell you the exact reason why they did that. And well, it's another important step in what it took to become, to develop broadcast stereo. We might call this the final step before the breakthrough. Well, it was one way that they tried to do it anyway. Okay, with the magic of a really good camera, my Olympus OMD EM Mark V, and a really beautiful lens, a 17 millimeter 1.18 here, we can discuss this unit in nice detail, have a lot of clarity here, and as you can see, it's a very complicated unit. If you look from top to bottom, you'll see on this side it has tuning A and tuning B. It's not a very elegant way to talk about, I mean, these days it wouldn't be considered marketing wise. You'd call it something different than tuning A or tuning B. But at that time, Japanese wanted to be very straightforward so that hopefully people would understand their units. But you'll also see there's two different scales on here. There's a left-handed tuning dial glass here with a pointer, and there's a right side too. And in the middle you can see a tuning eye, and perhaps you can see it there. It opens and closes as it tunes in stations, which was, well, this preceded meters and things that you would adjust to indicate when your station was tuned in to its maximum clarity. So the tuning eye is one of those things today that people really seek out as really cool vintage audio. It's a marker of really cool vintage audio, these tuning eyes, they call them. Well, the reason why we have two sides here is there's two different layouts. There's a layout for the A side here, and there's a layout for the B side. And the reason being is when Pioneer was working to try to develop a unit that could do stereo, they weren't sure what the final shape of stereo would be. In the late 1950s, there was a pioneering effort to try to broadcast from two different radio stations, two different signals, and then combine them. So if station A would say, hey, we're broadcasting our signal on AM 810, you would come over to the unit, you would dial in 810, you would turn on this side over here, dial in 810 until you had it really locked in very nicely, or as good as could be. And then you were also told that the FM signal will be broadcast on 102.4, and you would turn your dial accordingly, and this unit would combine both signals into a really, what I call a faux or a contrived sort of stereo experience. Pretty cool, but very ungainly, because as you know, when you have AM broadcasts, they're very subject to interference from car ignition circuits, and maybe a wife running a vacuum, or a dad running a shaver. There were all kinds of interference issues that made it really impractical, but it's really cool. And on this side, on the A side, we have SW for shortwave over here, and we have the AM up there, and then we have the phono and the FM multiplexer getting ready for the future, and then an auxiliary. We have a bass and a treble, and we also have a balance and a volume control. And on the B side, we have the same layout, but we don't have the shortwave here. Our shortwave dial is over on this side, over here, along with our AM and shortwave. And then we have the FM and the AM on this side also. We have what's called a rumble filter, which is to allow for to accentuate the low frequencies and cut out the highs. And you also have the scratch filter, which cuts out the lows and accentuates the highs. You know, what we would call high pass and low pass filters. It could accommodate a tape player. Interesting, this thing mode blend, it's supposed to blend the stereo to a normal or stereo normal, stereo reverse. I'm going to be honest with you, I got it working, but I have no concept what that is. And then of course we have the loudness indicator here too. So it's a very functional layout. It works well. Let me just turn off the camera 1 second and get the unit on, and we'll go up and down the dial a little bit. I've never really picked up anything on the short wave, maybe because I'm out here daytime and it's also summer, and signals propagate better in winter time and certainly in the evening. So tuning down, I'm really not getting anything there. But I really didn't expect to. Yep, nothing there. So we're going to go over to the FM and try doing a little listening there.
It seems like
we're actually going to stay on the same side with the FM, but we'll just the AM. I mean, we will tune up. I'm down at the pretty much at the low end here. I don't have a good FM antenna. I mean AM antenna.
Costs in the facility that they're housing the company in, and their employees are going to have housing stock that's maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of the cost of housing in Silicon Valley. That's absolutely going to be very, very compelling for that company to make that move. Take advantage of that state and municipalities.
Better be a multi-millionaire, bro.
Out of California.
Pitto says other companies are likely to follow suit.
This is KCBS in San Francisco.
As prices get higher in the Bay Area and California.
The company says moving to Oregon will lower their taxes and labor costs. In the Silicon Valley Bureau,
they're going to be happy to hear that in Oregon.
KCBS has always...
All right, guys. Dave, Chris, Josh, thank you all so much today.
680 Sports
again, my name
Talk.
is Ethan Merriman. We'll talk tomorrow, but keep it tuned in here to KGO 810. Our friend Brian Copeland.
810. We're a little off on the scale here. KGO San Francisco.
Terry, broad macrocosm environmental concerns. There's not much we can do.
Psychobabble.
There's just not much.
International Champions Cup. Manchester United contra Manchester City. Por ESPN Deportes.
To you, without the distractions of Golden State Warriors, including,
Fox News lists. Eric
That's our local KSRO Santa Rosa.
People don't feel they're being heard.
Cat Tim.
It could have consequences here.
They're tackling the issues head on and getting perspective from some of the most unique voices out there.
5 o'clock will never be the same. How?
Mexican. All right, let's go up the FM though. This is where Pioneer really excels in FM detection. This is probably the most sensitive receiver I have for signal acquisition, and I don't even really have a decent antenna right now.
Así es Maquila. Sara, ponte el cinturón. Maquila es un nombre muy bonito. Me gustaría llamarme Maquila. Hay como 12 Saras en mi clase. No vamos a dar más.
Listen to how clean that is. It's beautiful. Oh, la música de los B-52s.
I know you're trying to forget, but between the drinks and subtle things, the holes in my
so clean, this unit.
I'm trying hard to think. Don't tell him, you ain't even gotta tell him, don't tell him, you ain't need, don't tell him, you ain't even gotta tell him, don't tell him.
I won't tell him, bro.
Don't be angry, don't be sad.
Sound good, nice bass.
Over good times.
make our dreams come true.
Talón de Aquiles, mi punto más vulnerable.
Okay, I think that's about it. Those of you who are new to the channel or have been on another planet for a while, you'll understand or you'll know that I have a wall of sound inside, and I really enjoy showcasing that. And of course I have a playlist showing the construction of the wall of sound that I built myself with threaded rod and boards there. I think you may enjoy that if you check out that playlist. But one of the things I like to do when I'm detailing a unit such as the SM-Q300B here, the Pioneer unit, I like to start my listening outside here and about halfway through, cut through the song and then take the unit, set it up on the wall of sound and finish playing it through. One of my favorite tunes recently, I don't know why I always defer to music that's very simple in its form and very elegant in its structure, and oftentimes that's as simple as just a piano and a very, very light accompaniment. And when you have a unit like this, you don't want to hash out, you know, something like Highway to Hell on AC/DC. You want something that has quiet periods in it, periods where you can really have accented and get a chance to really appreciate the cleanliness of what's coming out and how nice the sound is rendered, even though it's not being rendered in stereo but mono, carrying an equal signal to both channels. The song is called Oriental Sentimental. It's one of my favorites that I'm trying to use a little more in my videos. Sit back and enjoy. We'll start in here, dim the lights, do a little extra videoing, and then we'll finish up inside on the wall of sound.